More than 550 schools have been affected, in fact 601 by the recent deadly floods in KZN. So what measures will have to be put in place for pupils and staff who won't be able to return to classes tomorrow? Let's get an update now from the Basic Education Department spokesperson, Elijah Mhlanga. Mr. Mhlanga, thank you very much for joining us here on All Angles. Now, just confirmation that the Minister will be visiting KZN tomorrow and how this shows the magnitude of the problem now.
Good afternoon, Maseko. There are 630 schools that are affected in the floods. The Minister will be going there to the province. We have already been there, and she will be joining the MEC for Education in KwaZulu-Natal together with other officials and district directors in visiting schools in the affected districts where schools have been damaged. Others, the roads have been cut off and those schools are not accessible. So there's huge damage that has been caused there in terms of infrastructure, but we know also that there's a human cost. We have 57 learners who have since passed away and 5 are still missing. So the numbers are more likely to go up.
Quite sad there, especially looking at the fact that there's also that school last week where pupils and staff could not leave the school because of how badly it was raining, and they had to spend the night there with community members, of course, taking it upon themselves to help them with food, etc.
Well, it was not just the rain that prevented them from leaving the school. The bridge, which enables access to the school, was washed away, and the road was also washed away. So there was no access. In fact, up until now, there's no access to that school. And this is in Molweni in the Pinetown district. We'll attempt to go there. So the only way the learners and the teachers could be rescued out of that place was through a helicopter. And the helicopters were finally secured and they were used to remove them. But that cannot be the way of living. We need to find another way. Tomorrow, many schools around the country, including in the province itself, will be going back following the ending of the Easter holidays. But we know that the 630 schools in KwaZulu-Natal tomorrow in the affected districts will not be able to open.
And we did speak, in fact, my colleague Aviu Mdila was speaking to the Deputy Mayor, Mr. Mhlanga there, who said that, schools will not reopen. Is that something that the National Department of Education agrees with for now?
Yeah, we do. It's just horrible. Even today, some of our colleagues visited some of the schools which are now accessible because the rain has been continuing, which means that for a long time, we're not able to get to some of the schools. That's why the numbers have been going up every day of the schools that have been affected. We expect that number to still continue because in the reports that we're getting from our district directors across the province, it was clear that some schools remained inaccessible due to the mudslides that were still continuing. So it was too dangerous for anyone to venture in those areas where there's still a lot of water flowing by and rain still falling. So the numbers will continue. And as a result of that danger, we are saying safety first. So we are saying teachers and learners and parents shouldn't even attempt to go to a school which is not safe. Only in those areas where there was no flooding can they go back to school. But in the affected districts, they need to consider carefully their options before they go into those schools. But we know also that flooding has happened and some schools are still waterlogged even as we speak, based on the images that we received today. So tomorrow the minister will be visiting the different districts to see for herself what needs to be done. The cost, of course, is now estimated at some 411 million of the damage that we have been able to ascertain. As the numbers continue, it could go up as well.
And, 411 million rand. I remember earlier this year, Mr. Mhlanga, the department actually had a media briefing just before it was announced that schools would let go of the old COVID-19 timetable of, rotational learning. The DG of the department said from previous floods already, there was a lot of money that was needed to fix those schools. So I imagine that this now makes matters worse.
Yeah, it's a serious setback. There were 200 schools in KZN which needed to be fixed before this flood took place. And the Minister of Finance announced 2-3 months ago that there was some 400 million which had been set aside to fix those schools. And now we have new schools which have been affected in the recent floods, and that just complicates the matter further. So the money is easily going to 1 billion, which is required based on just those figures that we have put together if we were to fix all the schools at the same time, which is always very difficult. And at this rate, the rains are still coming. So it looks like the damage is just too much. But it's not just fixing the schools, because there are some schools which are affected because we can't reach them. But the school itself is in a good condition. But how do you get learners there? Because there's no bridge, there's no road, there's no access to that particular school. So the complex nature of the situation is such that we really need to be innovative. That's why various ministers are in the province to look at different options that we can put in place for relief to be brought to those communities. And we still need to deal with psychosocial issues following the loss of lives. Some children have lost their parents, some parents have lost their children, and others have lost everything. So it's just a whole range of things that need to be done. That's why we need everyone to come on board.
I was actually going to ask you about the psychosocial support, because that's going to be very important after you've been able to gather everything together. But just before I let you go, Mr. Mhlanga, in terms of no schooling for the 100, for some 100, I think 100 and something schools that are inaccessible at the moment, how do you then make the decision as the department? How do you assess? Because, some parents might come back and say other learners are continuing to learn while mine can't go to school. I know that it's about safety. I'm just trying to get to how you decide that while others go to school, others must remain at home. Or did COVID probably teach us, the fourth industrial revolution that we need to continue learning besides the disasters we face?
Masako, the people of KwaZulu-Natal in the affected district are in so much grief right now. I think they are focusing on recovery, relief, assistance, with all sorts of things that even if we were to say keep your child for now at home and try do what you can to try recover what you should recover, no one will be worried just from that social perspective. But from an education point of view, we have put together a recovery plan in terms of curriculum. The province will present that tonight at 6 p.m. We'll look into that and see what it is that we need to do, because we understand that schools should be going back tomorrow. We should be able to recover because we know the number of days lost thus far. Going forward, yes, 101 schools remain inaccessible, but plans will be made to deliver mobile classrooms. But it also means that we relocate those schools from their original places to other places, especially because you can't access it. I mean, it's not that you have a choice. You don't have a choice. What you require is a helicopter to go there, but how many people can a helicopter really carry? So it's just impossible. It's logistically and practically impossible to have people going to school in places that have been cut off from everything else. So it's a very difficult decision to make, but because we know how many schools and how many learners, what grades, we should be able to put in place a comprehensive recovery plan to assist them.
Absolutely. I think for now it's about mourning the devastation that this has caused. Thank you very much for your time here on All Angles. That was Basic Education spokesperson Elijah Mhlanga.